It's late at night, and you're already in bed, ready for a sound rest. But somebody's at the door, trying to enter without your consent. Could it be a robber, a random intruder? Or could it be something more mysterious and inexplicable altogether? A home is a man's castle, we say, but as we saw in some of my previous episodes, our homes are not exactly impenetrable as we hope it to be. We already took a look at stories of home invasions by robbers, sinister visitors, and phroggers. If you missed those episodes, I'll leave the links in the description. But today, we are reading stories of more creepy and supernatural nocturnal visitors. What could they want? Why do they want to get into our homes so much? So, here are 6 allegedly true stories about ghostly nocturnal visitors. As always, handpicked, translated and narrated by a host, Anthony. It was one weekend when I was 12. My parents were away on a couple's trip, and my brother decided to have a sleepover at his friend's. It was a rare occasion that I was home alone, so I used the day to play my favorite computer game all day long. But past 2 in the morning, I couldn't stop my eyes getting heavy. I finally turned off the computer to get ready for bed. I suddenly realized the total silence around me once the computer fan that had been running all day was off. I guess that was why I could hear the bell of the elevator stopping on my floor, after door opening, and the sharp footsteps of high heels walking along the corridor. It got closer and closer, and finally stopped at my door. Could it be Mom? I wondered. Thank God I decided to turn off the computer and go to bed just in time. But I didn't hear the front door opening, yet the sharp footsteps were now inside the apartment. Even if Mom had managed to open the door so silently, there was no way she would have kept her shoes on inside. Koreans would always take the outside shoes off when coming inside the house. And yet, the footsteps walked inside the house and got into the bathroom. I was so scared that I could only shiver under the duvet. I could not even breathe hard because I was afraid the intruder might hear it and find me. Next thing I heard was water running in the bathroom. It stopped, and then the high-heeled footsteps running madly all around the bathroom, all over its walls and even the ceiling. I think I passed out at that point. When I got around, it was morning already. Was it just a dream? I first checked around the house to see if anybody or the sign of intrusion was there. Nothing in the living room, kitchen, parents' and brother's room. My heart jumped so hard when I was about to open the bathroom door. What if somebody pops out of there? But when I looked inside, I think both my breath and heartbeat stopped for a few seconds. Because all over the floor, walls and ceiling were dirty, muddy footprints. It's a story a colleague told me during my military service. He said it was a true account, but there's no way I can verify it, so take it with a pinch of salt. It's what happened to the colleague's female friend. Let's call her Kim for the sake of the story. Kim had a particularly small heart, or should I put it as being very cautious? She came to Seoul for university and lived by herself. She clearly was yet rather uncomfortable with a new life in the bigger town. She tried to come back home before dark and installed an extra lock to her flat door too. But being a fresh woman, it wasn't possible forever. One day her colleagues kept her for a drink party. The occasion was particularly fun, and alcohol felt so smooth somehow that Kim ended up staying till late for the first time. By the time she came back to her place, she didn't even bother to wash and fell straight onto the bed. What woke her up was the sound of somebody trying to open the door. She quickly checked her phone. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. Kim was already terrified, but managed to sneak up to the front door and took a look at the peephole. There was a woman outside, dressed in white hanbok, the traditional dress, with her ponytail braided down to the floor. Kim wasn't sure if it was a person or a ghost, but there was no time to contemplate on such a matter. The woman had a big bundle of jangling keys and trying them on Kim's door lock one by one. Before Kim could decide what to do, a key matched and unlocked. Thank God Kim had installed a second lock, but the woman was once again going through her keys for the second lock. And soon, the second lock opened too. It was an instinctive reaction on Kim's part. She locked up the first lock. The door wouldn't open, and the woman outside started trying her keys for the first lock once again. Soon it unlocked, and just in time, Kim locked up the second lock again. That way, the silent game of unlocking one lock and locking up the other carried on. Kim was shaking all over, but it was one game she couldn't lose. When she got around, it was already morning, and she found herself hanging onto the doorknob. Maybe it was a particularly vivid nightmare, maybe induced by the alcohol. She shook herself up, got ready for the day, and went out. And found some people and emergency staffs outside her next door. Kim asked one of them of what happened.
The guy living there was found dead. His door was left opened. The cause of death seems to be heart failure, they say. Found no signs of foul play. Weird, isn't it? Considering he was a young student,
a neighbor said. Chuseok holiday when I was 25. I met some friends and went for a drink. I wanted to keep it small and simple, but some friends invited in their friends too, so it became rather a large gathering of 10 or so guys. Time was passing 1 a.m., but we were still going, pouring and emptying our glasses. My phone rang. It was from Mom. My mom hardly ever calls her sons unless something was really wrong. I picked it up worrying what it could be this time.
Hello, son. Could you maybe come back home as soon as possible?
Mom said. Her voice sounded somewhat anxious. What is it, Mom? I said.
There's somebody at the gate trying to come in,
Mom said. I got a taxi home and also called my older brother to tell him to go back home to check on Mom. Fortunately, my brother wasn't far from home and he was with Mom by the time I got home.
"Where have you been?"
Brother said. "Out in town to meet some friends. I told you earlier where I was going," I said.
"Are you sure? Didn't you stop by home?"
"Of course I didn't. What's this all about?" Then Mom told me what happened. After I and brother went out, a neighbor came over, so Mom and she drank tea, shared festive food, and chatted away till midnight. It was after the neighbor went that she heard the doorbell go off. "Who is it?" she said as she went to answer it. "Could you open the gate, please, Mother?" The voice sounded like me, but weirdly dry. "You are home already. You told me you'd be late. Is everything all right?" Mom said. "Could you open the gate, please?" The thing is, I don't speak that politely to Mom with all the "could you, would you, please" and such. Mom couldn't shake off the feeling that it couldn't be me at the gate. Give me a minute. I have to put on some clothes," Mom said. "Please, my legs hurt." The voice now took on more irritated tone. Mom tried to call my brother first, but he didn't answer, so she called me the next and told me to come back. After that, Mom carefully peeped outside. The gate is not very high, only comes about as high as my nose, so Mom could indeed see the dark shadow of a person. Try the gate knob, look around up and down the street, and once again call out, "Mother!" When Mom didn't give any reaction for a long time, he finally spitted "shh" under his breath and went away. You might say it could have been some robber or such tried to trick Mom, but I couldn't just explain it away rationally because when I was 17 and home alone, something mimicked my mom's voice and tried to get in. I wonder if the two could be the same thing, and why it wants to come into our home so much. If what people say be right, I must have been born with a weak chi, life energy. True or not, I anyway blame that for my frequent sleep paralysis and weird things I witnessed in my childhood. You may think it's all BS, and I know that's what most people think. All my life, I've pretended I don't believe in ghosts and paranormals because I am afraid to be taken as a weirdo. I even consulted some psychiatrists, but nothing came out of it. It still didn't change that I see and sense things others don't. This particular episode goes back to when I was 6 or 7. My family lived in an apartment block. My parents both worked and came back home late. Around that time, somebody would come and knocked on our front door around 7 in the evening. For some reason, he didn't even bother to use the doorbell, but would always knock on it. It would start with a gentle knock and,
"It's me. Let me in."
my older sister seemed to ignore him, so I too kept quiet. The knock and call got louder and wilder to the point of banging with a fist. It got crazy loud and scary, but my sister didn't care a thing and kept scrolling down the internet shopping mall. I felt disturbed, but also curious why the person was so desperate to get in. The same thing repeated day after day. Looking back, I wonder why I never asked my sister about the situation. Probably deep inside, I knew she wouldn't understand me. About a month later, I think it was in March, sister was away to a school field trip and I was home alone. I tuned in for my favorite cartoon show on TV that started at 6:30. And this strange visitor came half an hour earlier than usual. Not only that, he banged on the door from the beginning. My favorite cartoon was on, but I couldn't concentrate on it.
Hey, son, it's Mom. Open the door.
Mom? It indeed sounded like Mom, but if it were Mom, she would have just used her keys. Even if she had lost it, she would never bang on the door like that. But how come did it sound so much like Mom? But soon it took on a weird tone, as if the throat got choked up with mucus.
Open! I'm freezing!
I called Dad. Mom worked at a factory and could not usually pick up the phone, while Dad ran a shop, and told him there was somebody at the door mimicking Mom's voice. Dad told me stay put, never react to it, and he would come home right away. By then the cartoon show was coming to the end, and the person outside was now almost wailing and drumming on the door as if to break the door.
Open! Please! Let me in!
But one moment, it all stopped. The person outside got up and walked away. Just about 5 seconds later, I heard footsteps running towards. The door was opened and ran in my dad. He must have run all the way up and was panting hard, while I was all tears wrapped under the duvet. I guess that was the first time my parents got to learn I sensed something more than other kids. When I was 17, I happened to live all by myself because my parents had to go to a different province for their work. They got me an apartment small enough for me to manage. I enjoyed the sudden freedom, but I must say I did feel a bit eerie at nights. For one, in that new apartment, my eyes would just pop open, usually around 2 in the morning. Could be a bit before or after 2, but it was still almost always around 2. Such a routine carried on for about a week. And that particular night, I woke up once again about the same time. Unlike previous nights, I couldn't fall back to sleep. Probably that's why I heard that. A footstep walking from the elevator towards my end of the corridor. I don't know why, but that ringing footsteps from female shoes made me anxious, because I had a weird feeling that she might be coming to me. And indeed, the footsteps stopped right at my door. The locking system on the door was the password key, common in Korea nowadays. Basically, you slide the cover up to reveal the keypad and punch in the password. Whenever you punch a number, it beeps loud enough for the person inside to hear, and whoever was outside did just that. Slid up the cover and typed in passwords. I was totally frozen and couldn't even stand up. She even typed exactly 7 numbers, as my password was comprised with 7 numbers. My heart almost jumped out of my mouth. But then, the locking system beeped, indicating the password typed in was wrong. Thank God, Jesus, Mary, Buddha, Allah. But she didn't give up. She once again slid up the cover, and this time typed in 7 numbers in a flashing speed, unlike the earlier. But it was a wrong password once again. But again, slide up, and numbers. Now the speed was inhumanly fast, faster than when I once came back desperately needing to pee. But time after time, the password was incorrect, and the locking system turned itself off because she failed one time too many. You failed. Now F off! I cried in my mind. It was quiet all around now. I finally stood up from bed and went to pee. But as I went to the bathroom, I realized that I didn't hear the footsteps walking away from my door. That meant she never left. She was just waiting for the locking system to fire up again. Now I didn't care if she noticed I was in or not. I ran to the door and put all the extra chains and latches up, then jumped back in bed and hid myself under the duvet. It was quiet. No more beeping from the lock. Had she given up or managed to open it? I lifted the duvet to peep.
Thought you could stop me? Stop me? Stop me?
A female voice whispered right in my ear. I was frozen stuck there and could not move. And the next thing I know was I woke up in the morning. I ran to the door to check. Thank God the lock was still up and there seemed nothing out of ordinary. But when I opened the door and checked the locking system on the outside, on the keypad, the exact 7 numbers that made up my password were all scratched up by a sharp tool such as a tip of a knife. It left me so shaken that I promptly informed my parents as of what happened. They came over, thankfully it was Saturday, saw the scratched up keypad themselves, and asked the security to check on the record of the surveillance camera. They checked it around 2 in the morning. There were about 5 people coming in and out of the apartment building. But they were all known residents of the apartment, and none was seen wearing a formal shoes that would have made the sharp footsteps as I heard. My parents exchanged the locking system and stayed with me for the following few days. At least, nothing like that happened again. I gradually didn't get up in the middle of the night either. But I still wonder what that might have been. Summer 2000. I was a teenager then and enjoying summer vacation. I lived with Mom alone, and that particular day she went on a trip with her friends. I made the most of the alone day, playing as much computer game and reading as many comic books as I liked. Time was now passing 2 in the morning, and I went up to the rooftop to have a cigarette. Under the age, but I don't claim I was a model student. After enjoying the smoke, I was about to toss the butt down to the street, but stopped myself because somebody was walking past on it. And that person looked an exact cliché of a ghost as depicted in a TV horror dramas. Long white mourning dress and long black hair messily down. I instinctively hid myself behind flower pots and peeped on. The woman was holding what looked like a large kitchen knife. She stopped at the gate to the neighbor across the street and just walked in even though the gate was locked. A moment later, there was noise of struggle and argument. Soon, the woman came out of the house, dragging the neighbor lady by her hair. The neighbor resisted and struggled desperately, one moment begging for mercy, next moment threatening that she'd kill her. But the ghostly woman didn't let go of the neighbor's hair. She only pulled her hair backwards hard, forcing the neighbor to look straight into her eyes and spit it out.
Give up if I kill all your pups too, you bitch!
The neighbor still struggled, wrapping herself around the legs of the ghostly woman, only to get relentlessly stabbed by the big kitchen knife. The neighbor went limp even without so much as a scream, and the ghost dragged her on, spitting some swears. By then I couldn't even dare to move because I was so shocked and scared. But then the ghost suddenly let go of the neighbor's hair and turned her head straight towards me. She mumbled something in a low voice, but I didn't stay there to understand whatever she said. I jumped and ran back inside. I locked all the windows and doors and turned every single light on. I called Mom, but, well, she should be asleep considering how late it was. I wanted to call somebody else, anybody, but who would be there for me near 3 in the morning? I even thought of calling police, but I knew it wasn't just a normal murder case. I had seen a ghost before, and I could just tell it was yet another ghostly manifestation. I shivered all night long, and only with the sunrise, peeped outside, made sure the ghost wasn't there anymore, and ran to a friend's. He, of course, didn't believe me. He dared me to prove it, and we even went to the neighbor's house, but of course, there was not a trace of a single blood drop. At least a friend hung around with me at a nearby internet cafe till my mom returned home in the evening, because I didn't dare to go back home by myself. Only when Mom called that she had arrived at a metro station near home, I went there to meet her and came back home together. I told her what I witnessed on the way. Mom, of course, didn't believe me and told me I must have dreamt it all. But neither of us could say anything anymore when we saw the funeral lantern or caretaker's lantern hung in front of the neighbor's house. We were not close to that particular neighbor and couldn't really ask what exactly happened and who died, but I am 100% sure it had to do with what I saw the previous night. Hi, it's Anthony here, and thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's stories. Thankfully, I live in a small town, and nights are rather quiet here. But in summertime, when I go to bed with the windows wide open, I'm rather rudely reminded there's a whole different world out in the dark. I don't even know what kind of wild animals roam around in my garden, but my sleep is often disturbed by some rustles, bustles, screech, and groaning of them. If I should get disturbed by a wild world minding its own business, I can't imagine what I would feel if I got a proper invader, paranormal or not. Do you get peaceful nights where you live? If you are forced to choose, would you rather put up with a never-ending urban noise in a big town at night, or the screeches of mystery animals in the wild? If you enjoyed my work, please give it a big thumbs up and a comment, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. If you'd support me more directly, I have a Buy Me a Coffee account, the link's in the description, or there's also a Super Thanks option here on YouTube for a small donation. Thank you. Until the next Sunday, stay safe and take care.